Plans for a new Starship static fire site in Florida move the upper stage catch test campaign closer to dual coast operations. This is SpaceX Daily, episode 69. Starship Flight 14 could launch as early as late August and would mark the first attempt to catch the ship upper stage with the launch tower arms. The test follows earlier booster catch demonstrations and targets a net timeline of late August. Success would validate a new recovery path for the upper stage hardware that has so far relied on ocean splashdown. Engineers are monitoring propellant loads and structural loads on the ship's catch points during the descent burn sequence. The ship upper stage would execute the final hover and positioning sequence using only its reaction control thrusters and main engine gimbal after the payload bay is empty. Remember, we covered the Starship program yesterday. This catch attempt moves the reuse goals forward by testing upper stage recovery for the first time. Project Ignition would place a dedicated static fire facility at Kennedy Space Center for Starship upper stage engines. The site would allow hot fire testing without relying solely on the Texas Starbase infrastructure. Permit documents outline concrete foundations, flame trenches, and propellant storage sized for repeated Raptor firings. This addition supports higher flight cadence by decoupling test campaigns from launch pad availability. The Florida stand would enable separate test campaigns on the ship, while Texas infrastructure remains focused on integrated launch and catch operations. Additional filings expand on earlier permit requests for a dedicated test stand at the Space Coast and target static fire operations for both booster and ship elements. Local environmental reviews are underway to assess noise and exhaust dispersion, and the filings specify flame deflector geometry and deluge water systems sized for the full Raptor cluster. 2 Falcon 9 missions are now targeted for mid-August from opposite coasts. The Globalstar 2R mission carrying 9 satellites is scheduled for August 16 UTC from SLC-40, with booster B1090 on its 14th flight, landing at LZ-40 after a 41-day turnaround. The US SF-366 National Security Payload is scheduled for August 15 UTC from Vandenberg SLC-4E, with booster B1088 on its 18th flight, targeting the drone ship OCISLY after a 48-day turnaround. Weather constraints and range availability remain the final variables for the Florida return to pad-adjacent landing zone 40. The Space Force awarded 5 companies $60 million for multi-vendor satellite network tests. Amazon LEO, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Rocket Lab, and York Space received contracts to prototype links to the SpaceX-built data network backbone. The work tests interoperability across commercial and government satellite constellations through the existing Starshield-derived relay architecture. Bulgaria approved a draft memorandum with Starbase Europe to develop a new space and defense innovation hub. The collaboration focuses on technology development and supply chain capabilities to support component testing and integration work for European launch and satellite programs. Observers on local Florida forums are tracking sonic boom modeling for the upcoming Falcon 9 return to LZ-40 and comparing predicted overpressure levels with prior missions from the same pad. Reddit users noted the short 4-day pad turnaround claimed for the upcoming Globalstar mission and questioned whether it reflects a new operational baseline for SLC-40. Community trackers highlighted the 18 flight count on booster B1088 for the US SF-366 mission and discussed remaining life limits on the Falcon 9 fleet after repeated high-inclination flights. Worth keeping an eye on, SpaceX AI and Dharana Hybrid are locked in counter lawsuits over as much as $570 million in disputed payments. The filings center on contract performance and termination clauses, with resolution requiring either settlement or a court ruling on the underlying obligations. The dispute involves competing claims on milestone deliverables and payment schedules tied to prior engineering work. On the AI front, SpaceX's NVIDIA alliance is being positioned to extend from terrestrial GPU clusters into orbital and deep space applications, according to investor commentary. The partnership would leverage existing GPU supply agreements to support both ground-based training clusters and potential on-orbit inference nodes. Musk confirmed the fourth SpaceX AI data center in Memphis, while noting that illegal gas turbines at the site are being removed as part of the broader Colossus-class build-out supporting XAI training runs. Grok 4.6 has launched, leaving one remaining XAI Odyssey project before the stated ultimate AI goal is reached, and the release adds new inference optimizations that reduce latency for developer-facing tools. Cursor agents now launch 3 times faster following recent optimizations that improve agent handoff speed inside the editor environment used by developers integrating Grok models. From an engineering standpoint, the planned tower catch of the ship upper stage on Starship Flight 14 introduces a new set of first principles constraints compared with the Super Heavy booster catch already demonstrated. The ship descends under a different mass distribution and with a different center of gravity location once the payload bay is empty, so the vehicle must execute a precise flip and hover before the tower arms close. The mechanical interface must absorb both the residual velocity from the final landing burn and any lateral drift caused by wind or residual propellant slosh. Because the ship lacks the booster's grid fin control surfaces, the reaction control thrusters and main engine gimbaling become the only means of fine positioning in the final seconds. The catch arms must therefore tolerate higher lateral loads than those seen during booster recovery, while still preserving the ship's forward structural integrity for potential reuse. If the catch succeeds, it removes the need for a separate downrange recovery fleet and the associated ocean splashdown hardware, collapsing the recovery cost toward the raw propellant and maintenance expense of the engines themselves. That reduction is the same logic that made booster reuse economical. The idiot index for the ship drops when the expensive heat shield tiles and avionics no longer risk loss on every flight. The open engineering question is how many additional structural reinforcements the ship's forward section will require to survive the arm loads without adding prohibitive dry mass. Each kilogram of added reinforcement directly reduces payload capacity to orbit, so designers face a classic mass fraction trade-off between catch reliability and mission performance. Florida's new static fire site under Project Ignition directly supports this path by allowing repeated Raptor firings on the ship without tying up the Texas launch mount. Each test cycle burns through a known quantity of methane and oxygen. The cost floor is therefore set by the propellant price and the labor hours to reload the test stand. Faster iteration on the ship's landing burn profile becomes possible once the Florida stand is online, shortening the timeline to a reliable tower catch sequence. The stand's flame trench and deluge system are sized for the full 9-engine cluster, enabling full-duration burns that replicate the thermal and acoustic environment of an actual descent. This separation of test and launch infrastructure mirrors the approach used in earlier Falcon programs, where dedicated test stands accelerated engine qualification without constraining flight rate. A quick look at the markets shows S&P CX closed at $141.29. Before we go, Starship Flight 14's upper stage catch attempt remains the clearest near-term test of whether the program's reuse architecture can scale. That covers everything worth knowing about SpaceX today. S&P CX is trading at $141.29, down 0.5%. A quick rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify goes a long way. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. See you tomorrow. This show comes to you from the NERA Network. If you want another sharp daily briefing, Planetarian Daily has you covered. Daily breakthroughs in science, health, and longevity. All our shows are free at neranetwork.com. The Do Positive Pod is the club for people who do something about it. Episodes and the dispatch wall at neranetwork.com/thedppod. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.